Hey everyone, welcome back to the It's a Mind Game podcast. My name is Jade, and today I'm so excited to be introducing you to Suzanna, who is 34 years old, lives in Connecticut, and had HA for 8.5 years. She's currently studying Drug and Alcohol Recovery Counselling and works at one of our favourite places, Starbucks. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No, it's very exciting. And I especially love this part of, I guess, the whole podcast experience because we first got connected through Instagram because you're a listener of the
Yeah,
podcast. And then obviously you've been going through your journey with HA recovery, and now you've had those recovery periods and you're here to have the powerful influence of sharing your journey.
yeah.
Very cool. Now, I guess to dive on into things, do you want to paint us a little bit of a picture as to how your HA journey started? Like, what was your training and diet like? I guess the mental side of things, did it start off somewhat, just a fun, healthy fitness goal that sort of crept into a more aggressive behavior? Or just tell us a little bit about it. Where did it all start?
It started a very long time ago. When I was like 9 years old, I became bulimic,
Mhm.
and that continued on. And then in 2013, so I think I was like 25, um, I just started getting really serious into the gym, and it had nothing to do with health or fitness. I just wanted to lose more weight. I was already underweight, but I wanted to get a little, I guess I wanted to build some muscle. Like around that time, the like fit chick persona was coming out. So I started to go to the gym and work out more. Um, and I convinced myself that I was allergic to dairy and gluten. So I cut both of those out of my diet for a few years. And it wasn't, it wasn't very long after that my period went missing
Mm.
and didn't come back.
I get,
So,
yeah, I guess two things I want to jump on there is one, how common it is for us to convince ourselves that we've got these allergies and intolerances, because then
mhm.
it becomes a non-negotiable. It's like if someone questions it, it's like, no, but I'm allergic. Like I literally can't, it will make me sick. And when
Yeah.
we're in that sort of life, it's so easy to convince ourselves of those sorts of things. Was there anything in particular that helped you sort of believe that? Like, were you experiencing gut disturbances, or was it literally, you read a few things and it just sort of convinced yourself that you must be allergic to it?
I read a few things, and then I was bloated constantly because I was bulimic at the same time,
Mhm.
and restricting. And obviously that causes bloating, which I didn't know that at the time. And I had other digestive issues. And so I'm like, oh, well, it must be true. I must be allergic. I have to cut out two entire food groups, basically.
Yeah.
So, and of course, in the beginning, I started feeling a little better because that's what always happens when we eliminate food groups for whatever reason. You feel a little better, and then you start to not feel so great.
Yeah.
But at that time, by then, it was too late, and I was losing weight. So I'm like, oh well, you know what?
It's a
I'll take the
double
weight loss.
positive. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like I feel
yeah,
that little bit better. I'm losing more weight. This must be
yeah,
the answer.
exactly. Yeah, yep.
And then I guess backtracking, because 9 years old is so young to be experiencing bulimia. And we know that eating disorders are starting even younger in kids these days. If you look back on things, do you feel like there was something that sort of triggered the bulimia? Like at that point in time, were you already quite conscious of body image, body weight, or were you like a stressed out kid that just didn't know what to do? Because when, bulimia, yes, it's the manipulation of your body weight, but a big part of it is what to us in the time feels like emotional regulation. It's like, oh my gosh, I can absorb everything and just set it free. And I guess people who haven't experienced bulimia might not understand sort of that feeling sometimes. But as someone who had bulimia myself, I know that there was a part that was definitely manipulating my body image, but a big part of it was just not being able to navigate emotions.
I think it was partially that, but also I grew up hearing the women in my family talking about going on diets and talking about having to lose
Mm.
weight, and every woman except for my mother, basically. That's all they talked about, And I was always, I don't want to say chubby, but I was kind of like, I was a healthy kid. Like I know now I'm not meant to have a small body. You know, I'm like, I'm not meant to be really skinny. And having a brother and a sister who are skinny,
Mm.
it made me feel like I needed to do something, sorry, um, to change that. And my family was very, I don't want to say strict with our eating, like, but we sat down and we had to eat our dinner. So
Mhm.
it wouldn't have been easy for me to just not eat. So I'm like, oh, there has to be a way to get it out.
Yeah,
So,
undo it.
and then because I developed it so young, it just became part of my life. It was my identity
Mhm.
for so many years.
Yeah, and it's one, like, all of these conditions are difficult to break, but bulimia can tend to have that sort of shame spiral attached to it too, because it's something that's so
Yeah.
aggressive, but at the time it's happening, it feels like there is no other answer. It's like, but I have to. You don't understand. I can't survive unless I do this.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's where it is that really toxic spiral, because it's like a stress relief, but then it's also causing the stress. And then you feel like there's no way out, but then you also can't survive unless you do it. And it's just, it's an absolute web of thoughts and
Yeah.
emotions. When you were going through, because it sounds like you had bulimia for quite some time, and I'm sure you would have had moments where you thought no more, and then you go back to it, and
Yeah.
then no more, and then go back to it. Did you find that you were experiencing just that huge whirlwind of thoughts and emotions, like all the reasons to justify why you had to, and all the
Oh, absolutely.
reasons saying why no, 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 you can't do this anymore, like you can't?
Yeah, absolutely. I went in the 24 years that I had it, I had 2 years, like 2 solid years twice. So 4 years of nothing. And then I realized that I was over exercising basically, and that's another form of bulimia, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I wasn't binging and I wasn't purging. And those 2 times, it was kind of like out of sight, out of mind. But then there were times where it would hit me, and I'm like, no, I have to do it. Like, I have to do this. This is me. This is who I am. Like, what else do I have if I don't have it?
Mm. Yeah.
It was like letting go of my best friend at that point. It was how I coped for
Yeah.
so long. So I almost felt guilty for letting it go. You
Mm.
know what I mean?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
It's and I guess that's the interesting part of when you've experienced it, it kind of makes sense. And it's, even though, yes, it's a coping strategy and it's not a helpful one, there's some level of gratitude for the fact that it got you through,
Yeah.
even though it's not helpful. And like, we can openly say that, like, it's not a good thing to be bulimic, and it's absolutely something that should be worked on if you're experiencing that. But
Mhm.
throughout that time, we can create a reality where, but this got us through, this helped us feel better. You
Yeah.
were sometimes a positive part of our life, and that's the something we
Yeah.
construct, and it's very believable to us. And I think in that moment, that's where it makes it really difficult to have a conversation with someone about having bulimia, because as much as you don't want to binge and purge anymore, some part of you can't stand anybody telling you you're not allowed to again, because it does feel like a breakup.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's very
Absolutely.
much like, I need to do it on my own will and with my own choice.
Mhm.
When it comes to you sort of breaking through, because I understand that when you started exercising heaps more and that kind of offset the binging and purging, did you feel like it offset it because you had justified the food intake? It's like, well, I've trained this much, so now I don't need to. Or did it kind of just disappear as you started training more?
I feel like it justified it. I
Mhm.
still would have, 1 or 2 episodes, obviously, because I was eating less too. I started restricting a
Yeah.
lot. And I noticed too, eating less and exercising more, I was losing so much weight. And on top of it, because I convinced myself that I had those food allergies, I was afraid to binge at that point. Like, I was
Yes.
afraid that I was going to trigger something. So
Mhm.
that's how I was able to not binge.
Mhm.
And when I exercise, I'm not as hungry. Like, it takes away my appetite. So I feel like that in the beginning um was helpful to not even want to really binge. that makes sense.
No, absolutely, and I'm really glad you brought that point up because it's so common for women going through HA or who are having eating disorders, but still having a cycle, and they're told, "Look, you really need to eat more just for a general health standpoint." And their response is, "Yeah, but I'm just not hungry. Like I'm really in tune with my appetite. I eat when I feel I need to." And that's true. Like that is what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely correct of when you're doing intense exercise, your appetite does get suppressed. And a big part of that is a hormonal response and also the digestion slowing down. And that's where it is so important that no matter what capacity of exercise you're doing, whether you're hungry or not, it's so essential to get that fuel in pre and post training. But when you're in the mindset of less is best, it's so easy to go, but why would I eat when I'm not hungry? Like I trust my body. Did you
Yeah.
find yourself in that sort of place? It's like I'm
Yeah.
actually so confident with myself that I only eat when I'm hungry. And it just turns out that I'm not hungry much.
Yeah. It was like that. And then for me, the binging and the bulimia it just became such a monster at that point,
Mm,
and it was so uncontrollable that I was happy, I was relieved, you know?
yeah.
Like, I don't feel this urge to do it anymore. I was terrified to think about it or to
Mhm.
talk about it. It was kinda, under the rug kind of thing where I just pretended it didn't exist because I was terrified of it at that point.
Mhm.
So, I just went with it.
Yeah, and it is such a scary thing. It's like you have no idea the capacity your own mind has to be so nasty towards your own mind and body. And it
Yeah.
does feel somewhat like a demon takes over because
Mhm.
it feels like there is no control. And obviously it's something you can get back. But in the moment, it's just like, how does this happen? How does this happen to me? And once it does click in, why can't I stop it? It's like, something's been let off a chain. Um,
Black out. I would
yeah,
black out.
yeah.
I remember you talking about it on an episode once, right?
Mhm,
Where unless you've experienced it, you can't explain it really,
mhm.
where it's like you're a separate person. And then even now, like I'll sometimes I'll think about it and I'm like, it's like PTSD. It's like,
Where did I go?
yeah,
Mm.
I don't remember any of those episodes, you know? And if I try to, it's terrifying. I'm like, that's not me, you know?
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that's sometimes where the shame side of it comes from, because it's like if I'm to describe this to somebody, I don't want them to know I've got the capacity to turn into this other entity in the moment,
Yeah.
because it is just in the moment. But because it's so difficult to work out what's happening, you become scared to identify with it, because it's like, what happens if people think of me what I think of myself while this
Yeah.
happens? And that's why
Yeah.
I'm honestly so grateful you for being so open about this, in this moment right now, because I'm sure so many women listening that are experiencing bulimia either currently or in the past, hopefully this will give them some level of comfort to be like, yeah, it is a monster, but you're not the monster. It's the eating disorder that is. And as soon as you can learn to cage up the eating disorder, that's where the freedom comes from. And,
Yeah.
sometimes that transition out does turn into over exercising, under eating, because it's like, well, there's nothing to throw up anyway. So there's no trigger,
Yeah.
there's no prompt to do it. And it's like you almost need to use, not, you don't need to use. Sometimes it's like you escape one bad behavior into another, but that behavior kind of helps you get away from the demon. And then it's a whole new journey in itself.
Yep.
When it comes to your, I guess, eating disorder recovery side of things, so because you had bulimia for such a long time, that would have been huge personal growth and development in order to get to a position where, for the most part, you're not bulimic. Like an episode might happen here or there, which, like, let's make clear, like, it can happen. It doesn't mean you failed at anything. It's
Mhm.
just like that's part of the recovery process. What was a big turning point for you to getting to a point where you really challenged the bulimia? Was it the overtraining and restricting, or did other things sort of come into play as well?
Uh, I mean, I didn't really get to that point until maybe a few years ago,
Mhm.
you know, where things just started getting really bad. And honestly, I was tired of it. Like I got to the point where I've been doing it for so long, and I started looking at the wreckage of my life. I started looking at the relationships that failed and the friendships that failed. And, I see everyone who's my age and they're getting married and they're having kids and they're buying houses and they have careers. And I'm sitting here, living with my parents. Never have a boyfriend. I don't date. I barely have any friends. And I'm like, where did my life go? And then I'm like, in the toilet, basically. Like that was a big eye opener. And then it got to the point where I would feel so guilty about that. Then I started to binge and purge again, because that's how we deal with guilt, right?
Yeah.
And then I want to, like, about 3 years ago, I was in a relationship and he was perfect. Like, he was everything I ever wanted. But I got to the point where I couldn't feel anything. Like, which I know now, a lot of it was I was numbing myself, but a lot of it was hormones. At that point, I had HA for 7 years at that point, or 6 years at that point. So I realize now that was my hormones. That was me having no feeling. Like, I
You didn't have the capacity, right? To
yeah. And I never realized that that hormones like estrogen, progesterone are also linked to serotonin and our happiness hormones. I never realized they were linked. So but I didn't feel anything, and I broke up with him, and that kind of just sent me into this recovery journey, basically. Like, I started really thinking about getting my period back, and I started really trying to figure out how to do it. And I mean, I knew how to do it from the beginning. My doctor told me I need to eat more and exercise less, which was, I couldn't do that back then. But 3 years ago, I'm like, you know what, I need to try this and see what happens, and just, whatever happens. And yeah, and it was working. I got to the point where I was eating more and I was still exercising a lot, but I started noticing my body changing. I was gaining a little bit of weight. I felt a little better. Everything was working out. Did I answer your question at all?
No, absolutely you did. Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
I feel like there's such a strong correlation between HA recovery and deciding what it is you want from life and going for it, because it's easy to get obsessed with diet and exercise, because not only one, do we actually enjoy it in the moment and it gives us that sense of control, but also if we're feeling lost in what we actually want from life, it's the ultimate distraction from thinking about it. And and sometimes it can just be that people are getting married, they're buying houses, and you go train more, because it's like, I don't want to think about the fact that these things aren't falling into place, so let's go train it out. And then all of a sudden you have that sort of moment of, hang on, maybe I need to start running from this, and I need to actually start going, well, if I want to have the kids, if I want to have the career, if I want to have the house, my gym membership's not going to get me there. What do I need? And then sort of with opening up those doors comes that capacity to, well, what else can I challenge? Like, if I'm going to challenge what I want in my life, why not try this challenge of restoring my hormones and having a period? Was somewhat of your personal growth, do you find sort of interconnected in that way, that you sort of realized the relationship breakdown happened, that you want more from life, and you want to get your period back? Did things sort of start to block in together like that?
Yeah. And it started to progress from there. But yeah, it just started to come together. And I also, another big thing that helped me to recover and to actually try to take care of myself, basically, I started listening to like different Christian podcasts, and I started praying, and I started like really looking at my faith. And that definitely helped me to see things in a different light, and to see myself in a different light too. I stopped looking at my body as something that I needed to change, and I stopped looking at myself as just aesthetics. I looked at myself as just my body for so long, and I never really thought about, the other qualities that I have. So that helped too.
So when you look at yourself now versus then, what would be some differences? So obviously you said back then it was very aesthetic focused. Like I need to look a particular way to be winning at life per se. Please always correct me if I say something that's not true to your story. Whereas now, what's more of the commentary you have around yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually for that matter?
Like my good qualities or
Yeah. Like
who I
if you think
am.
about back in
Oh
the
yeah,
midst
I
of
mean,
things before you
yeah.
decided to recover, if I was to say, what are the amazing things about you? Would you have naturally gone to aesthetic points, or would you have still said, I'm happy, I'm loving, I'm all these sorts of things? Like, is there a
Oh no.
comparison in how you view yourself now to back then?
Yeah, back then it was I have abs. That was my favorite thing about myself was
Mm,
my abs. And my bones. I was very proud of like certain bones that stuck out. And I my trademark basically was my super short bleach blonde hair and my sporty boyish look. I was just this tiny little athletic thing that
mhm,
I didn't see, mind you. I didn't realize how small I was until I looked at the pictures, until I look at the pictures now. But that was my thing, and that's how people knew me. I was the girl that goes to the gym all the time. Now, when I think about myself, I don't think about my body parts first. I don't think about what's physically attractive about me first. I think about my nieces and how much they love me and how I spend time with them now, and I think about when people describe me to other people, they say things about my personality and how nice I am and how funny I am and how they talk about my energy, which I never understood that, but they talk about, my energy and how I attract people with that,
mhm,
how I make them feel rather than I attract them because I'm attractive.
mhm.
And that's how I look at myself now too. Like I'm starting to see that no, I'm pretty smart and I'm make people laugh, and I'm an influence in these little girls' lives and I'm a good influence in their lives. Um, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's so powerful, and thank you for sharing that, because it really is such a shift from thinking that our physical body is our greatest contribution to the world.
Yeah.
And, as you said, we have the capacity to not only change our own lives, but to influence that of those around us in the most incredible ways, some small, some huge. And once you can sort of recognize that, there really does feel a sense of ownership and responsibility. It's like, well, how great can things be if I'm not only trying to be the best version of myself mentally, physically, emotionally, and how can that actually help the people that I love around me? And as you referenced to your nieces, I love the power that's in that, because we grew up in a different time where there was so many comments of how people look and how the skinniest woman is the most successful woman, and in order to be on a magazine cover you need to have had the weight loss journey or have bones sticking out, or what's the lowest calorie salad. And I look back now and I think, gosh, I saw those things all the time. And as a kid, I was just like, yeah,
Yeah.
look like her, be like her, do this, do that. There was no, how is she actually helping people in an educational sense or in a spiritual sense or in
Yeah.
a loving, kind sense. It was just, she looks good in a photo.
Yeah.
Not is she well, or there was none of that conversation. But because we've had these lived experiences and we've overcome them, now we have the capacity to stop other women from going through what we did, because we can be the better influence. It's not always being like, oh, she's skinny, she's big, she's this, she's that. Instead, it's like, wow, look what she's accomplished, look how
Mhm.
kind she is, look at the success, look. And we can bring into play so many better benchmarks on
Yeah.
what makes an incredible woman.
Mhm.
Um, if we were to talk about your training right before you decided to recover from HA, because I know that's probably the most wondered question through listeners. It's like, well, what was your training like when you decided to recover your period? And did you go all in? Did you back down from training a little bit? What was that sort of timeline like for you?
Okay. So the last attempt, the one that I was successful with, was my third. I've tried twice before to recover. In the beginning-ish of, or like the end of 2016, 2017, I tried just stopping training. I gained some weight, but I was still restricting. Uh, and then I basically gave up. I'm like, oh, I feel pretty good. I'm going to go back to working out. So that one didn't really do anything. And then the second time, I, or actually after that, like a few months after that, I stopped taking my antidepressants and I had a massive mental breakdown. Like it was terrible. Not even, I didn't realize I was having one really until I looked back and I'm like, yeah, I definitely downward spiraled right back into bulimia, right back into anorexia, over exercising. It was a really bad relapse. And I obviously lost all the progress that I had made. And then I tried again. And that time, I think my body was going through a lot of um, refeeding, maybe, and like a little touch. I I wasn't feeling well. I was holding a lot of water. I stopped working out and I was eating more. But physically, I couldn't handle it. So I went back to restricting again. And then the third time, so in 2020, in September, I started looking more at, I was following different like Instagram accounts and they started talking about like metabolic resistance. And I noticed that even though I had lost a little weight, I stopped losing weight. Like I was not able to lose weight anymore. I was cutting my calories even lower. I was working out even more, and I couldn't lose any weight. So that's kind of what started me looking at my hormones and trying to figure out, what can I do to fix them. So I got a Dutch test, which is like a send away. Do you know what it is?
I've only just heard of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it was on a YouTube ad or something like that. It's a
Yeah.
blood panel, isn't it? And they go through like insulin response,
Yeah. It's
inflammatory markers. Is
Yeah.
that
And they saliva too, and they do the cortisol awakening response. So it tests your cortisol and how your body metabolizes it. And it's fascinating. It's expensive. It's like $500.
Mm.
But
But
um
were you happy with the data that you got back?
no. So that's what
Okay.
really inspired me. I found out that my cortisol was sky high all day, which at that point I was also I was waking up at like 2 in the morning. No matter what time I went to bed, I would wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, which is actually I learned is what happens to people who have high cortisol. Because the stress response, it just wakes you right up.
Mm.
But I was waking up and going running because
What else are you gonna
I
do?
had nothing else to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hate running. I'm not a runner. I don't
Yeah.
know how I turned into a runner for a year, but I hate running. But I had nothing else to do. So yeah, I mean, all of my sex hormones, the progesterone and the estrogen and all of that, those were all super low, like not even on the chart, which I knew. Um, but the cortisol was really high. So after I got those results, I basically was like, all right, I need to do something. So I increased my calories. And can I, am I allowed to say numbers?
Yeah, yeah,
Is that
absolutely. Yeah.
okay? So
Oh, we'll just put a marker. Anyone who's feeling a little bit sensitive about numbers, maybe skip ahead a couple of minutes. But
so at that point, I was training, I want to say like 5 days a week. I was running every morning that I worked. So I was running 5 days a week, like 5 miles at a time, sometimes
fasted
six,
or with food?
with food.
With food? Okay.
Yeah. I can't do anything fasted. I tried that too. And it's just, I can't.
No, it's a wonderful thing. I just know that
Yeah.
most women that are listening, it tends to be, but how is she running? So if I ask little questions like that, it's just to get clarification. And
yeah. Um, and I was eating, I mean, I wasn't drastically, I don't want to say I wasn't drastically under eating, because obviously I was, because I
Mhm.
didn't have a period, right? Um, I was eating probably around 1,800 calories, give or take, at that point, but I was also training pretty intensely.
Yeah. And for the
Um,
most part, if you've got a relatively active job, being you're just on your feet walking around for
yep,
most of your shift,
yeah.
you can't trust calorie watches and things like that.
Oh,
But
no,
if you
no,
were to
no.
use something like that as a reference, if you
Mhm.
have a relatively active job, you would
Yep.
easily chew through 1,800 calories in a day.
Oh,
So
yeah,
if you're
yeah.
consuming that and then exercising on top, it's like, yeah, absolutely. Surface value to people who don't know much about that world will go, oh,
Mhm.
1,800 though, that's pretty, you're eating a decent amount. And it's like, no, no, you're
Yeah,
not.
not to mention, I have, after for training for so long, even though I was restricting too, I have a decent amount of muscle.
Mm.
My body fat percentage has always been really low, and I have a lot of muscle on my body. So, that also burns more calories, right? So I decided after I got those results, that I was just going to increase my calories, and I started eating more snacks and whatever. And I was at around 23 to 2,400 every day, even when I didn't work out. And I cut down my training a little bit. I went from like 5 or 6 times of weights a week to 4 times a week of weights. And I was doing the elliptical for 30 minutes every time that I went to the gym. So 4 times a week. And then I was running
Yeah,
three or
so
four
still a
times.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I thought, I'm like, oh, I'm eating so much.
Yeah,
So
so I
it's
can do
okay.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My Apple Watch tells me that I just burned 500 calories, before the sun comes up.
Hmm.
So I can eat more. That was my justification.
Yeah.
Um, and then that went on, and obviously I started feeling better, and I had a lot of benefits from all of this. I actually, like my hair was getting thicker and stronger, and my nails and my skin and everything was looking better, and I was feeling better. And in that year, I also started to have cervical mucus,
Yes.
which I hadn't had in 9 years. So I'm
Yeah.
like, what the hell's coming out of me right now? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and every day I thought, I'm like, well, I'm going to get my period soon. This is working. I'm one of those girls. I don't have to stop training. You know, I can keep training. I just have to eat more. And every
It
day,
felt like you were so close because you've
oh
had
yeah,
none of
yeah,
these things happen and then
yeah,
suddenly they
yeah.
did. And obviously they are incredible markers. Like if women start to experience those things,
Oh yeah,
that's our biggest like tick. Like good, you're on a good thing, but it doesn't mean you're at the point of the best thing yet. It's just
exactly.
you're making positive changes, keep going.
Yeah, yeah. So that went on for a few months, more than a few months. That went on until this past summer. So, November of 2020 to July, July of 2021, June, July. Um, and then like I went on vacations with my family. I stopped running in the morning, and I started being a little more, I don't want to say lax with my food rules, because I still had food rules, but I started being a little more lax with
Like,
my food rules. We'll
like
just say
there's a
that.
bit more compromise. You
Yeah,
could
yeah.
find
And
little
like
windows to do shifts that you normally wouldn't do. Like it was very toe
yeah,
in the water.
yeah. Like
Yeah.
it turned, I started to like take my nieces out for ice cream every once in a while, and actually have an ice cream, which was huge. Like my mother cried when I had my first ice cream with them, because it I was at this point where when we go on vacation every year, I would have ice cream for every day for a week,
Mm.
but it was once a year, and that was it. It's all I would let myself do. And then over the summer, it turned into, 2, 3 times a week, I'm going out to the local ice cream shop with my nieces. And then I started going by myself. And that was like my little, I'm like, I'm just going to have an ice cream every day until I get my period back. And actually, like at this point, I was still running, and I was astounded because I wasn't gaining any weight. And I'm like, what the hell's going on with me, Then I just figured out I have like a pretty adaptive metabolism where, I have to go really low to lose weight, but I can go pretty high before I start gaining weight, right? And at the same time, I was still running. So over the summer, in like the end of July, we went to Florida for 2 weeks. And at that time, I stopped running. Um, and then I just didn't run anymore after that. And then all of a sudden, in like a month that I wasn't running, I gained 10 pounds. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like I haven't changed anything. And then I realized that I wasn't running anymore, but like as far as food goes and everything, I didn't change anything. And I'm like, I'm broken again, what's going on? And I gained that 10 pounds. And then after that, I thought for sure, I'm like, I'm going to get my period for sure. I gained 10 pounds. Of course I'm going to get my period. I still never got my period. And then I remember, I don't even remember when it was, but I listened to so many podcasts, and I listened to and that's how I found you. Right. And it was, when was it? It was like August, I think. And I listened to you, and I listened to your story and how you basically did the half in thing for a while. Right.
Yeah.
And then you gave yourself a month, right? You're like, I'm not going to exercise for a month. And then you got your period back. So I'm like, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to exercise for a month. So I took the month of August off, and I made it a day. Basically, I'm like, no, I'm going to go to the gym. I got to go to the gym. And then I just kept going. And every time that I was going for like the whole month of August, I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like I felt guilty, and I just kept feeling like I need to do this. I need to just try. I need to stop exercising and just see what happens. I already put in so much work. I'm already having so many benefits. I had the cervical mucus. I had, all of my, I had 2 weeks straight where like my boobs hurt, like, which things that just didn't happen, for so long. And I'm like, I have to be so close. Let me just see what happens. So I finally, on September 21st, decided I wasn't going to go to the gym anymore. And it was easy for me to do that, as far as filling time, because I also started school at that point. So I was, on my days off from work, instead of going to the gym, I would just do my homework and do nothing, and I was taking walks. In the beginning, I was walking like some ridiculous hour and a half or something every day. And I'm like, well, this is stupid. It's counterproductive. So I even stopped doing that. I cut it down to 30 minutes a day, on my days off. So 3 times a week, I was walking 30 minutes a day. And then I was working too. And I have an active job. Like I work at a coffee shop. We're busy. So I definitely get a lot of movement there. I didn't sit on the couch. But I stopped training. And at that point, I had a little bit of the extreme hunger hit, because, my cortisol finally was going down. And then all of a sudden I'm starving and I want to eat like Pop-Tarts. So that's what I did. Every night I had 2 Pop-Tarts and a hot chocolate. And that was like my nightly snack. And I'm like, this is okay. And for the first time in all of my attempts to recover, like it really was okay. Like I didn't have the anxiety over what I'm eating, because Pop-Tarts are quote unquote bad for you, right? Like I didn't have that anxiety. It was, this is my goal.
A choice.
Yeah, this is my goal. And this isn't forever. Like this isn't for, I'm not going to have to do this for the rest of my life. This is just right now. And we'll see what happens, right? And then, a month went by and I'm like, well, it still hasn't come. What's going on? What am I doing wrong? And I wasn't doing anything wrong at that point. Like at that point, most days I was probably around 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day, which I was totally cool with. And, I know a lot of women, and that's cool. And it's cool. Like they have their journey, whatever. Um, a lot of women will eat like all of the candy and all of the cookies and all of the ice cream, all of those things. But I was always like, I don't want to call it a healthy eater, but I'm always very,
You're drawn
I
to
like,
whole foods. You like whole
yeah,
foods. Yeah.
yeah, I like whole foods. I like to cook for myself. I love vegetables. I love fruits. I'm not really a snacker. So, I just increased my calories, with that. Like I didn't increase like my fruit and my vegetables, but I ate more oatmeal, or I started adding like peanut butter to my oatmeal, or something like that. And then my little nightly Pop-Tart and hot chocolate snack was just kind of, that was like basically that was like my screw you to my eating disorder. Like I'm going to let myself eat this because I never let myself eat this.
No, but
you know
and I love that you describe it that way, because once you get to a point where it is a choice, you're not doing it because I have to eat this way, because unless I eat this way, I'm never going to get any better. It's like, no, I'm not tolerating these thoughts anymore.
yeah
It's not going to do it. And it's a very
yeah
different thought process. There's this forceful, I must eat this way, otherwise I'm going to be broken forever sort of mentality. And
yeah
there's just, no, I feel like Pop-Tarts and I'm going to eat them. Like
yeah
the outcome is the same. You're still eating them, but
exactly
the thought and the stress response towards it is so different. Like that, I must do it. I must do it. It's very, I'm in a hurry. It's a race, pressure, where that,
yeah
no, this is my new little nightly ritual and stuff you ED, I'm not tolerating it anymore. It's a very
yeah
like cool, calm, happy to be here
yeah
kind of experience, knowing
yeah
that I can keep doing this till the end of my days, or I might choose to not do it anymore. But for today, I want to and I will.
exactly yeah um what was I even saying? Oh yeah. And then I started giving up after a month, right? And I messaged you too. I remember I'm like, I'm about to give up. Or no, you messaged me and I'm like, I'm about to give up. And we had a conversation and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna give this a little more time, right? And then like 2 weeks later, my lower back hurt so bad. Like, and that's always what happened when I would get my period. So I thought for sure, this is the day, tomorrow morning I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna have it. I was so scared for the pain to go away. I wouldn't even take anything. My mom's like, why don't you take some Advil or something? I'm like, no, I want to feel this.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't felt this in so long. I want to feel this. Right. And then that pain lasted for 2 weeks straight. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? I thought I had a kidney infection or something at that point, I'm like, what is this? Right. And then exactly 2 weeks after, which was exactly 60 days after quitting the gym, I got my period. I woke up in the morning and I went to the bathroom and there it was. And I can't even explain that. Like, that feeling. Like, I can't even describe how amazing it was for that to happen. I had to call everyone at 3:30 in the morning. I'm calling everyone, and it worked. Like my body needed exactly 2 months of no exercising and 10 more pounds on top of the 10 that I gained over the summer. But, I don't, not that I don't care, but I don't care. Like, it's not the end of the world anymore, Like, I needed to gain weight. I needed to do what I did and it worked.
And the moment you get your period back, it's like for so long you question your body's capacity to heal, if it's ever going to happen for you. Have I just done so much damage that it's impossible to reverse? And there's so many things that you criticize on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
You're constantly battling those thoughts to go, no, this is going to be worth it. I just need to keep going. It's going to be worth it. I've got to keep going. But it is a war, like every day, that sometimes is less, sometimes is more. But like it is mentally a very draining process. Like absolutely, you have the days where you're free spirited and excited and like everything's happening and I get to eat ice cream and I don't even care. It's just fun. Like there definitely is those days of this is awesome. Like I'm so glad I'm living this life. And then there's the days of like, yeah, I'm living this life. Where the hell is it? Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing all of
Yeah.
this. Grit your teeth. Here are the stories. Why me? What's going on? And you instantly go like, it's my fault. It's my fault it
Mhm.
hasn't come back yet. And then the
I'm
bleed
broken.
shows up. I'm broken. Like, we're so
Yeah.
quick to say it's our body's fault. And it's like, oh, your body's just trying to do its best with the environment it's
Yeah.
got. Like, always, in any way, shape, or form, having a cold, an infection, trying to get your cycle. It's just trying to keep you healthy all the time. And when that bleed happens, did you just feel like such a restoration in the faith you had in your body's capacity to just do
Yeah.
anything? It's like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, if I just provide the best environment I can, my body has the potential to do the most incredible things.
Yeah.
Did that sort of feeling wash over you? That's just like oh my goodness, this body is so amazing. And it's got nothing to do with the size of it. It's got
Yeah.
nothing to do with the shape of it. It literally just self-healed from damages I've been bringing on for years. And it did it. I just needed to show it some love and comfort. And here it is.
Yeah. I was overwhelmed by my body's capacity to heal, and how that's all it wanted to do was heal. I just needed to give it time,
Mm.
and just that it could shut off a basic function for so many years to protect me. And then finally, in the right environment, turn it back on. And just that moment was the moment where I'm like, I don't have an eating disorder anymore. It's like I let go. Throughout the process, obviously, I was letting go, but at that moment, like I feel like I let go of that identity, because that was the last thing that I feel like I needed to fix when it came to my eating disorder, because even though I wasn't restricting and I wasn't binging or purging and I don't have the urge to do any of those things, I still didn't have a period. So it was every day, it was a constant reminder of everything that I've done. And then when it came back, it was like all of that washed away.
Mm.
And it was amazing, you know? Now I freak out every month that it's not going to come back because I did something wrong,
Yeah.
but
I
we're
do
good
think
so
that's
far.
part of a process, though. It's like
Yeah.
gosh, I'm going to say at least 12 periods later, because I fell pregnant a few months after recovering. But even now, when my period's approaching, I'm still very like antsy as to when it's going to come. And
Yeah.
honestly, it's not coming from a place where I'm scared it's not going to, because deep down, I know I'm doing the right things. I'm fueling well, I'm training responsibly, I'm allowing recovery periods, I'm listening to my intuitive cues. And I have confidence in that. But the
Yeah.
fear comes from the fact of more like, I just don't want to hurt you again. So
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
and it's almost like you take so much pride in that monthly reminder now, that it's like when it shows up, it's like, oh, good. I'm so glad I honored you for the last month. Like, I'm so glad I did a good job. Thank you for letting me know. Like
Mhm.
that's how I view my period each month now. Like the days leading
Yeah.
up, I'm so certain it's going to come. But part of me is like, I need the reinforcement that I'm doing the right things. Like, give me the pat on the back, because
Mhm.
I'm going to be so upset if I find out that I've slipped in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that'll ever go. I don't know, because in my mind, it's kind of what keeps me making good decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. It keeps you
Because
motivated. Yeah.
yeah, it's like I need to be responsible, and if I want to train, I need to train responsibly. And if I
Mhm.
want to do, any nutrition changes and things like that, again, responsibly, not just a random
Yeah.
food change or anything like that.
Yeah.
When your period approach, how many cycles have you had now? Is it 3, 4?
3. I think the second one, I don't think I ovulated because it came after like 20 days. Uh, so I've had 2 where I ovulated, and then I definitely ovulated 2 weeks ago. So I'm due any day now for my third, technically my fourth.
Yeah.
So, but now
Um,
I freak out about this too. Like I know that I did, like I felt it, but now
yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, I'm on day 15 after, and I'm like, okay, where is it? I'm just gonna freak out forever. So
Yeah, until it shows up.
But
Then you're like, oh, silly Sally. Like I knew it was gonna. Yeah.
but like you said, it's a motivation, and it keeps you, I feel like it keeps us more in tune with our bodies and what's going on too, you know?
Yeah, I personally I like it. Like the
Yeah.
2 or 3 days later, I'd probably say otherwise because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like I know it's due. Just and you
Yeah.
do get the signs. Like I get mild cramping and I will cry at the drop of a hat for a 24-hour window
Yeah.
before it's due. Like I am so emotionally fragile. So I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, it has to be around the corner because I
Yeah.
just saw an ant struggle with a leaf and I'm crying about it.
Yeah.
um, but then all of a sudden, the cycle comes and it's such a joyous moment. Like I feel the same level of joy when my period shows up so many cycles later, the one I did that first time round. Because
Yeah.
things in my life have changed. Like I don't have the common I must be eating all the time, I must be snacking
Mhm.
all the time. I don't have the fear of training too much or not enough, or it's it's quite effortless now. It's like I've found
Yeah.
the rhythm that works.
Mhm.
And so for that, it's like it's so comforting to be like I've found grounding in that relationship and I've
Mhm.
still got the period showing up. Because as I'm sure, have you returned to training? Are you still all in? What's your
Oh no, I returned to training. I went back to the gym like a week after my first period came.
yeah.
And it was just, and I told myself that if the second one didn't come, then, I know now that I can pull back if I need to,
Yeah,
So I
you've
just went
broken the
back.
shackles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're in
So I just
control of the
went back.
training.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I went back just 2 days a week in the beginning. Um, much reduced from what I was doing before as far as intensity, much longer rest periods. Like I'm still in the gym for a decent amount of time, but I rest. Like I'm sitting there for,
Mhm.
a couple minutes between sets. And no, I wasn't doing any cardio at all. I won't even go near the elliptical because I think that took my period away. I decided that
Mhm.
the elliptical was just way too much for me. Um, and then my second one came on day 20 or 21. Like it just came out of nowhere. And that's, like I said, I'm pretty sure I didn't ovulate on that one. Um, and I mean, that could have been because I returned to training, um, and the stress on my body. I'm not totally sure, but I still, I didn't realize that I probably didn't ovulate until like later on. So I was like, okay, well, I've had a second period. Let me bump it up to 4 times a week. So I started doing 3 to 4 times a week, only on my days off from work. And the days that I train, I eat breakfast, I'll go to the gym, and then I come home and I eat, and like I don't do anything on those days. I rest. Like
Mhm.
I'm
So
not
you're
going to
you're
work
training
afterwards.
responsibly, you're fueling
Yeah, yeah,
responsibly. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm not going super long times without eating. That was one of my biggest things, was like little micro fasts, basically,
Mm.
where I would go, I would eat breakfast in the morning and then I wouldn't eat anything for, 8, 10 hours.
Yeah. Until like
So
early
now I try,
afternoon or
yeah. Yeah. And then between my second and third, I had COVID, and it was the same week that my period was due that I had it. And I had no symptoms at all. I didn't have no back pain. No, looking back, I think I definitely was a little moody. Um, but like I didn't really think anything of it. Plus I had COVID, right? So I'm sick at the same time. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? I was training too much. I messed up. It's not coming. It's not coming back. Um, and then day 34, I woke up in the morning and there it was,
yeah.
just out of nowhere, symptomless and everything. Um, which was nice. Like I didn't like, the cramps weren't terrible. It wasn't like a really, bad period. So, um, but yeah. And I'm training 4 times a week now. I will walk on the treadmill if
Yeah.
I feel up
Just
to
low
it.
intensity. Yeah.
Yeah, just a walk for 30 minutes. Or outside. I like walking outside. And then as far as like eating, I'm still up around 2,500 calories a day, but my hunger levels are not that intense anymore, because I'm training again, probably. But at the same time, I feel like giving myself permission to eat the ice cream and to eat the Pop-Tarts and to drink the hot chocolate, I think that took away a lot of the urges to like binge or to, like, I have to have this, I have to eat it, like
Yeah.
knowing that I can
Mhm.
now, I don't even want to,
That's a big
just,
thing that comes up with clients a lot, because obviously there's the element of extreme hunger that comes from being undernourished for so
yeah,
long. But there's
yeah,
also a big part of that mental process that comes through because of the novelty of the food, which is
mhm,
like, it's here now. And if it disappears and I don't eat it, I've missed my opportunity. I might not eat it for 6 months, 12 months,
yeah,
whatever it might be. So there
mhm,
is that very much, I must do it now. I must do it now. Mentally, I'm not ready, but I could miss out. Da, 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 da. And it really is taking responsibility for those thoughts and being like, okay, well, if I really want it now and it's not the time, is there a way I can take a little bit home with me and eat it later? Is there
yeah,
a way I can ask grandma to cook it again next week? Or,
yeah,
because often these circumstances happen spontaneously. It's like you've already eaten the food you want to, you could actually be full, and then
yeah,
something pops up that you
mhm,
only want because you don't always see it. It's not a
yeah,
hunger. It's just a,
yeah,
oh, this is my one opportunity. And then you eat when you're already full. And then it's like, well, I've got to go purge or run it off because I ate when I
yeah,
wasn't hungry. And it's so
yeah,
self-destructive, where it could have literally been, okay, well, can I take some home? Can
mhm,
I give myself permission to buy it tomorrow? Like,
yeah,
yes, I'm seeing it now and I know I don't want it, and that's okay. But tomorrow is just as good of an opportunity. And there's
mhm,
so many ways to just decrease that anxiety and tension that comes from feeling like you must eat right now,
yeah,
purely from thinking you've got a window that doesn't exist. Like, we've created it. It's a now or
yeah,
never thought. And for the most part, we've got food at our disposal all the time. If we really want something,
oh
we
yeah,
can go buy it. Like, the
mhm,
shops are probably within a couple of Ks at most. There's always a milk bar or a neighbor, or, there's always food readily available. But when we're stuck in that mindset, it's so now or never. And that's
mhm,
why I love that strategy you took with the Pop-Tarts and hot chocolate, because subconsciously you were just teaching yourself that I can have this whenever I want it.
mhm,
Today I want it, I'm going to have it. Tomorrow I want it, I'm going to have it. And if one day I choose not to, well, it's still going to be there the next. Like,
mhm,
that process you did was so much greater than just having a Pop-Tart. Like, you were literally
yeah,
giving yourself the confidence to know that you have the opportunity to choose what you want when you want it, any
mhm,
moment of every day. And when we've been so restrictive for so long, it doesn't feel that way. It's like, no, I got to eat every 3 hours, and it must be this
mhm,
breakdown of macros or this amount of calories. And it's so calculated. And
mhm,
once we can recognize that no, food isn't calculated,
mhm,
it's something we enjoy, it's something that we nourish with. It's like, it's almost a ritual, really. Like, when you learn to enjoy food for the taste and the texture and what your body's getting from it,
mhm.
it makes you sort of regret that idea of calorie counting where you just saw it as a number, because it's
Yeah,
so
stop
much
treating
more.
yourself like a robot.
Yeah.
Like we're not
Yeah.
robots either, and we don't like. I don't have to eat the same amount of calories every day. Like I don't. We don't have to eat the same. I would eat the same thing every day, every single day,
Mhm.
whether or not I wanted it, just because those were my calories, those are my macros. I have to eat this amount,
Mm.
and not honoring the fact that some days I'm more hungry than others. I never really paid attention to my hunger and fullness cues, and now I feel like I have them again because of honoring that craving and that hunger,
Mhm.
you know?
Do you find that your appetite comes in waves? Because I know that's something I found really interesting, life after HA, is
Mhm.
that because I now just eat when I'm hungry, I still make a conscious effort to eat regularly, because I think
Yeah.
once you're sort of over the eating disorder side of things, sometimes you can just get really busy and forget to eat, just like anybody else does. But it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I kind of know my system's a bit sensitive, so I don't want to put myself in a position where I forget to eat.
Yeah.
But I definitely find that I have waves of hunger where 3 days I might be ravenous, as in,
Mhm.
like, I finish a meal and I'm just hungry 10 minutes later. And I'll be like, oh, and some part of me still goes, what are you doing? Like, you just ate. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, shush, you're hungry. Your stomach's grumbling. You can't stop thinking about food. You're hungry. Go eat. So I go eat. And I might be like that for 2 or 3 days. And then all of a sudden I wake up one morning and I'm making breakfast. I'm like, oh, I don't even feel like brekkie. And I'll still have it, but maybe it's a little bit less. But throughout the day, I just notice I'm making food decisions based on, I just want to keep my body happy with food coming in, but it's not that ravenous hunger. And I'm not calorie counting at the moment, but if I was to, I honestly think if I was to look at, say, a week span or a fortnight span, it would still average out,
Yeah.
because it's like, you have a couple of days where you're really hungry, your body gets whatever it needed, and then it kind of just relaxes a bit.
Mhm.
Do you find that with your hunger too? It's like you have days where it's like, oh gosh, I'm just really hungry, and others, food's just not really a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have days where even I eat breakfast. I always ate breakfast as soon as I woke up. Like that's always been one of my things. Because if I don't eat breakfast, then I won't eat for the rest of the day because I would lose hunger, right? But there are some mornings where I wake up and I am famished. I am so hungry and I can't get enough food in me.
Mm.
And then there's some mornings where I wake up and I got nothing, not hungry at all. But
Yeah.
like you said, if I look at it over, because I do log everything basically into like my fitness pal. Um, but I'll look at it and it's like, okay, so Saturday I had 2,600 calories, but then Sunday I had 2,200, or over the week, like week to week, it does average out to be around the same, even if, one day I had more and one day I had less. So yeah, it's the same way.
Yeah. And I enjoy witnessing that, because for so
Mhm.
long there was no hunger cue. It was just eating like a robot. And then when my
Yep.
hunger cues come back in, they were so extreme. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm this bottomless pit that's never going to feel
Yeah.
full. And then now it's like, it's really nice. Just go, oh, I'm hungry. I'll go eat. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
hungry. I'll go eat. And it feels so simple. And I don't want anyone who's listening to this who's not there yet to be going, oh, well, life's great for you guys. But it in the moment, I never would have imagined food being this easy.
Hmm.
Like I didn't think it was possible. I always thought that I'd have to consciously need to choose to eat all the time, or I would be like force feeding myself, or that kind of deal, because I didn't have much of an appetite through my training. That's why it made it easy for me to diet. Like I
Hmm.
just didn't get hungry. But it's really nice to just be in a place where food feels effortless. And I find somewhat of that is really restorative with the period showing up. It's like there's
Hmm.
such a faith in your body's processing that if I just listen well enough, everything works out.
Yeah.
And it kind of instills it. All right, the HA recovery process, it's hard. Like you're walking through mud most days, let's be
Hmm.
honest. But by the time you're on the other side, it's a totally different life that you never thought was possible. And I also say that in a way of the way I'm living life right now. Back then, I didn't think I would enjoy this lifestyle. I thought I had to be training all the time, dieting all the time, being shredded all the time in order to feel happy. And this life would bring sadness. And it's
Hmm.
so far from the truth. Like the life I'm living now, like this is great. Like I'm sincerely happy in all respects. And I look
Hmm.
back to training copious amounts of hours and dieting so much. And I go, oh gosh, I just don't want to live that life
Hmm.
ever again. Like it was fun in the moment. I don't want to take away from that. I
Yeah.
thought that was the life.
Hmm.
Um, but it's funny how you flip the switch and your perception changes. I guess to close things off, do you sometimes think about how you were living and how you're living now, and the HA you had no idea you could live this life, and the current you possibly doesn't want to ever go back to the HA version of you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. All the time. And it's just amazing to me every time I think about that. And I'm like, and I've, especially lately, which I noticed like in the second half of my cycle, I start feeling like I need to go on a diet sometimes, or like, oh, I should lose some weight, maybe like tighten up, whatever. And like it's been a struggle for me the past couple days. And I've been wanting to go on a diet. And then I thought about it and I'm like, no, like that's losing a couple pounds would set me right back to everything that I ran away from, like everything that I worked so hard to get out of. I would just be going right back to that. I don't, and like you said, like I don't want to take away from that version of myself because she did what she needed to do. And that was fun. And I liked training and I liked the attention that I got because, I had muscles and I had abs and I was so cool. Right. So I don't want to take away from that. But at the same time, I think about it a little deeper now. And I'm like, that was miserable. I don't, I would rather weigh a couple pounds extra, than be skinny and miserable now. And for the most part, which I never thought I would be here either. And for 95, 99% of the time, I can say confidently that I'm actually comfortable in my skin, in this body. And if you told me when I was, a little 110-pound thing that at 155 pounds, I would be happy, I would probably throat punch you. Like I would be like, you're
I hear ya.
crazy,
I hear
like,
you.
no, that's disgusting. But I'm actually 100% certain that this is where I'm meant to be, like in this body. And just the power behind that is, I inspire myself,
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
knowing that. And that's the message that like I want to share that with anyone listening, that you like, I fully believe that you do get to a point where you actually feel at home and comfortable in your skin, and that the journey, it's like your journey back home to yourself, and then finally getting that period, like,
It's like the confirmation.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, like this is where you're supposed to be in every way, you know?
Yeah, I get
Yeah.
goosebumps as you say that because it's so true. It's especially when sometimes I think that that's where a prolonged HA recovery can be really helpful because
Yeah.
it's forced you to really do the work
Oh yeah.
because it's work.
Yeah, I would.
This is not a
Yeah.
walk in the park.
Mhm.
Like you are focusing on thoughts, beliefs, personal growth all the time. You're facing failure every day because that's what it
Mhm.
feels like every day. Well, it's not here, so I must be failing. And it's
Yep.
just you're pushing that rock uphill. And then you get to that point where you've discovered your true identity because, like, our fit identity, it's a part of us. Like, you've returned back to training. I returned back to training. And because we love training, and that's okay. Like, we're allowed to enjoy training and loving that intensity, but it's not our identity. It's something we enjoy. And
Exactly.
that's part of that transformation process about recognizing your hobbies aren't your identity. Who you are is how you act, the choices you make, the life you live, and essentially like the impact you're giving back to the world.
Yeah.
That's what makes you. And that restoration of your period, I think that it really grounds you in establishing that because
Mhm.
it forces you out of the smoke and mirrors of hobbies, and it makes you really think about purpose. Why am I here?
Mhm.
What am I doing with this life? How great can it be? And it does. It feels like a rebirth. It feels like that confirmation of self to have that period back and to have established, I know who I am now. And like, I love how you said it's like you return home to yourself
Mhm.
because you're no longer always trying to work out where your place is in the world. How do
Mhm.
I fit in? How do I get noticed? It's no, I mean, I like this. Like, I like being who I am and where I am. And anyone who also enjoys it, like, welcome. And if you're not a fan, that's okay. You go do you, and I'll do me. And there's so much peace that comes with just that.
Mhm.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
thank you for the way you outline that because it's beautiful because I never thought about it from that. like return to home and just loving the skin that you're in. But you're right, that's exactly what it feels like. It's like, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. Never thought I'd be here, but
Yeah.
glad I'm here. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a beautiful place to sort of wrap everything up. And I want to say thank you for being so open and honest about your whole experience, because no doubt it's been an emotionally yet transformative one. And I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud of all the progress that you've made, and how you can sit here talking to me now from a place where you're truly happy with where you're at. So yeah, I'm so grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I will pop your Instagram handle in the show notes if anyone wants to reach out and have a chat with you. And we will catch up with you incredibly soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening in on today's episode. I hope you absolutely loved it. Suzanna is so fabulous and has had such a transformative journey. And I hope it gives you hope to continue on with your HA recovery journey, or if you are beyond your HA recovery journey and just living the life as life after HA, that you can sit there and reflect on all the challenges and changes that you made, and how positive this current life is. As always, your support is so appreciated. So if you could leave a comment, share the podcast with someone else who would enjoy it, subscribe, that would be absolutely amazing, as the more we have that sort of input, the more we can reach a greater audience. As always, I'm so glad you're here. And if you want to connect with me, reach out on Instagram or my email address, which will also be in the show notes. I hope you have a fabulous day, and I will see you in the next episode.